Welcome back to the IeSF 2013 World Championship coverage here on Chaos TV. I am Stress alongside Panky. We're heading towards Spain versus the Netherlands. We're already into the picks and bans, and already we're seeing target bans coming out from Spain.
Anyway, that support Syndra that Kialis played in the last game. It's an interesting one. There's quite a bit of friendly banter going back and forth between these two teams in the pre-game lobbies. They're definitely good friends, and I suspect there'll be quite a bit of fun in this game.
Yeah, and we actually see the Netherlands banning out Corki, which is a champion they played in the last game. So maybe if they don't want... Yeah, well, if they're not going to get Syndra, they don't want any of that combination going over to Spain. Wonder what that's going to leave them open for first pickers. As we stand, there's Zed, Fizz, and Kassadin, one of which will be available if the other two are banned out here. So there's a good few strong picks. Elise as well still available, and Aatrox and Lee Sin. So plenty left on the board here for these two teams. We'll see what exactly does get through.
Yeah, that Corki ban, okay, they don't get their Syndra Corki lane from last time, but I mean, it's more than just that. Corki is an incredibly strong AD carry. He's great at the moment, of course, on this patch, the one behind Live, with the Trinity Force buff and all that funky jazz business, which, okay, their first pick, but it would suggest there's something they find more important that they would rather first pick, and they don't want to give up that Corki to Spain instead, so they'd rather take him away, which does still surprise me considering how you can still really bully him down with a good Caitlyn lane, and there hasn't been too many lane swaps during this tournament so far, so it's not like they were expecting him to be picked and then swapped away from them or something. I don't know, I would have rather seen something else, perhaps a Kassadin or a Zed, or they pick Zed, perhaps a Kassadin ban in there instead, but I mean, we could still see in exactly the same comp here from the Netherlands bar that Corki. We could see a different AD carry in that place, and then 4 more assassins anyway.
Yeah, plenty left available as well. We see Morsu will pick up Zed to start off their picks, and on the other side, Spain maybe thinking about going for Aatrox. That's a champion that sees a lot of play in Europe specifically. Americans did adopt him very early on, right after release as he was available, but then left him behind a fair amount, and then Europe kind of were like, hey, you can play this guy top lane and jungle, and everything started coming back towards Aatrox. But the Netherlands may be looking to repeat their composition from their previous game. Of course, the Syndra Corki not available for them, but Caitlyn would be a fine replacement in that kind of team composition.
Yeah, very much so. It should be able to siege down those towers a lot quicker too, because you wouldn't have to get quite so close, which was a slight problem Corki had in a couple of the situations. And later on, when a couple of people were getting away at slightly low health, a little bit lower, flashing over walls, Caitlyn could finish them off with the ultimate.
Yeah, over on the side of Spain, the first 2 picks were Lissandra alongside that Aatrox, which we talked about. Sona has been locked in, and then Ashe is the AD carry marksman, if you will, for Spain. Now, Ashe is not a marksman that we see all that much anymore. There was that period of resurgence, of course, Ashe Zyra being fairly well popularized by Cloud9's bottom lane pairing, which we saw lots and lots of play on the lead up to Worlds, but Ashe Sona is not a lane that is seen all that often, as Sona doesn't really cover a lot of the drawbacks that Ashe has in lane.
So basically here we've seen them do exactly the same thing they did before. Lulu is a little bit less damage based than Syndra, of course. She is a more primary support rather than an AP carry repurposed, but she still does a lot of early damage. She's got a lot of good pokes, some great wave clear, and will allow Caitlyn to really apply pressure under tower very early on in that bottom lane. But it's playing exactly the same comp again. I mean, they may have less face in this Spanish lineup than I do, but I'm not sure it's going to work twice in a row. And Spain's picks are still pretty strong in their own right.
Yeah, I have a feeling Spain
are not in their pick order, so I was very confused by that bottom lane Aatrox Kha'Zix combo.
It's going to be good with Smite. Yeah, Spain aren't in the desired order, whereas Netherlands they know the drill from the previous game. So, very similar team composition. That was a really, really strong composition as well from the Netherlands that we saw in the previous game. Spain, however, did beat Austria in their previous round, so we will see exactly how strong Spain are and whether they can contend with the team from the Netherlands.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to come down to the lanes. If the Netherlands are behind from the lane phase, then they're done. Then there's no way they can turn this around and come back unless they get some very lucky picks on some very important targets that lead to perhaps Barons or such stuff. But I very much doubt that'd happen. However, if they get ahead in these lane phases, if they start coming out with 2-3 kills like they were before, they're just going to snowball it through and do exactly what we saw at the last game.
As we are loading into this game, this is our 5th game of the day. Of course, we are broadcasting the IeSF 2013 World Championship. So only one more round after this in the group stage, and then we will have figured out the 8 teams advancing to the quarterfinals tomorrow. We will be bringing that to you around about 8 a.m. GMT. So a nice early start for everybody tomorrow. Nevertheless, we are into game here between the Netherlands and Spain. Netherlands on the blue side, Spain are on the red side for this best of one here in Group D. Both of these teams have one win to their name, and these teams are looking to take the step towards that first place in the group and take that one step closer.
So, let's see how they shape up at this level 1. Now, I don't expect to see too much. I mean, we saw some deep wars and a couple of early invades in previous games. But honestly, I think these guys, especially with their lane setup and their champ setup, are just going to guard their entrances, watch their entrances, and go to lane normally.
Yeah, that's what I would be expecting here as well. We still are yet to figure out whether Kha'Zix or Lissandra will be top and mid. They are fairly interchangeable, those two. We saw Kha'Zix top earlier in the day. Will we see Kha'Zix top this time? I have a feeling from Lissandra's positioning, it is going to be Lissandra top lane with Kha'Zix in the middle lane.
Certainly interesting, and it kind of makes a bit of sense because Lissandra is going to do a lot better against Zed than Kha'Zix would, and of course has that immunity and all the other crazy fun things that allow her to deal with Zed on her own. So it's an interesting lane swap position, but they need to scout a little bit better before really pulling something like that off, because as we can now see, she's not... Oh, actually, they did realise it. She's not going up against that Zed. They're being lane swapped. Oh, no, she's just recalling and going back down to the top lane. So yes, she's going to be 2v1, which she doesn't do too bad against. She's still very good in that 2v1 setup, but it's not against that Zed as originally anticipated.
Yeah, and that, I thought for a second they were going to sense it out there and swap it down into the bottom lane, but this also does let up a little bit of the pressure that I kind of was anticipating that would have gone on Ashe and Sona. Ashe is an AD carry that, without that innate escape, can suffer a lot of harass and then an all-in to follow up. So especially from somebody like Caitlyn who can easily poke her down. And of course Sona would have been able to heal her up, but it's just one of those things that Ashe has a couple of limitations in lane. We'll see how exactly these pairings do match up, but Caitlyn Lulu is a fairly strong push lane.
Yeah, they also waited in that top river bush for as long as possible to make sure they didn't reveal themselves, so that the Spanish team were just left in the dark, had as little information as possible as to who was going to be in that top lane. So waited there as long as they could. It didn't work out. Well, actually, it did work out fine. It did its job. We do see level 2 already on Zed, though. He did a little bit extra and has got a couple of extra creeps to his name. So ever so slightly ahead of Sandra now. But, I mean, that's going to level out a little bit later on, especially once she actually gets closer to her creep wave and once it's under turret. Unless she keeps taking all this damage. Ooh, Medlex takes a free tower shot.
Yeah, and Metalex has done a good job of using the headshot procs on to Fast Dragon whenever they've been able to line them up. Made sure that he was stacking it up early by sitting around in that bush, and then unloaded on Fast Dragon. And just doing so much damage. Healing up fairly quickly, though, is Lissandra. Of course, has that flask, but no health potions remaining. There's quite a few members, however, of the Spanish team up around this top lane. We'll see what they can get done here. Looks like they're trying to close in. There goes the Ice Claw. They don't actually follow up because she's so low on health. A flash used from Kha'Zix, and that is a waste of a summoner there, and a waste of time, more importantly. Meanwhile, down in the bottom lane, looks like the Spanish duo are pushing up fairly heavily, but I believe they've spotted Elise on that ward, so they do have to fall back. Fast Dragon is getting zoned out by Kialis, however, so they do still have to be careful that Fast Dragon doesn't take too much. Repel comes forward onto the minions. Morsu tries to follow up. Flash comes forward. Can't quite land the cocoon, but they do get the flash out from Medina.
So flash trades on Elise and Sona. Lulu flashed in the top lane when Kha'Zix tried to leap on her. I mean, Kha'Zix roamed away, giving him losing a bit of experience and gold away from their Kassadin, giving Kassadin a bit of free time. So I'm not really sure if that was worth it in any way just for that flash, especially as we all know how strong Kassadin can become. Yes, he was getting bullied down a little bit. Yes, Kha'Zix was having a rough roam, really amounted to nothing. And unless they really make the most of that low flash Lulu now by having Aatrox really pay attention to that lane, all it's going to have done is really put Kha'Zix further behind.
Yeah, and Frederick's actually hanging around in the jungle here. I know he was sensing that Bro was there. I think he saw him at that Wraith camp, but just standing around, not actually going anywhere. And that's one of the things that when you're playing a jungler like Aatrox, where your early game really is where you need to get the ball rolling, it's important not to just be sitting around. It looks like they are going to go for some sort of push on towards this turret, but that minion wave is dying pretty quickly. They will go aggressive, and that's a lot of damage coming out from Frederick and the rest of the Spanish team. They pick up the first kill, looking to convert it into another on Morsu, but nobody looked like they wanted to pick it up. They will trade one back on to Morsu, so that's a 1-for-2 trade in favour of Spain, but Netherlands will breathe a sigh of relief to pick one up there.
Yeah, and actually Kha'Zix picked up the kills too, so it's both very, very useful. They do get the tower as well, so they gain another 1,000 gold from that one. Sona, unfortunately, even with that last second heal coming out, you can quite manage to save her in life thanks to that stacking armor penetration, giving Zed one kill in return, but it's a very well executed dive otherwise.
And Kha'Zix has spent a fair amount of time out of lane, and Hoodboss really isn't doing a lot to make it worth it. He's only 6 CS ahead, and that's twice now that Kha'Zix has roamed and tried to make an impact on this game. Hoodboss, however, is level 6, so that's the period where Kha'Zix will start to make a little bit more of an impression. Sorry, Kassadin will make more of an impression. A very nice Ring of Frost will lock 3 in place. Kialis is sure to fall here. They do trade one away. Hoodboss does pick up that kill, but it is 1-for-1 here. No passive on Aatrox, so he's forced to pull back.
Yeah, and that will mean a return turret then from the Netherlands side. But because Kassadin's roamed top, because Lulu has died and they know this, the immediate response from Spain is to go down and do that dragon.
Yeah, that's really, really good initiative there from Spain. They know even without their jungler, there's very little that the Netherlands can do to contest that, and it's very rare actually that you see a dragon taken without a jungler this early on into the game, but they knew they were able to do it, and now they extend their lead. This is actually a lot closer game than the last one. Netherlands might even be in trouble here. As you can see, a lot of damage goes down onto Bro, forced to repel out towards red.
Kha'Zix, however, therefore knows red is here, thanks to the fact that Elise managed to use it to escape, and therefore is going to try and steal it with a little bit of help from Sona. But Kassadin returning to the lane, they've got to be very careful, especially now Zed's come around behind him. Pepper sandwiched in this 3v2, but Ash is coming in. Sona will get nuked down. Ash arrow is off. Kha'Zix leaps away.
Oh, that's a good follow-up, and Morsu nearly paid for it with his life. He was about one auto attack away from Kha'Zix from dying, but a good pick up there. Morsu now 3-in-1, and then Bro is going to get caught out here. Kassadin looks to follow up, but Frederick has quite a bit of health left, will drop him down, but Ash is very low on mana. I don't think she's quite got enough to keep that slow applied.
That, and with one last refolk, of course.
Yes.
Kassadin can get on out of there, yeah. Looks tight. Top tower will now fall then, so finally there is that extra 1,000 gold in the Dutch pockets. And that evens the gold out more or less. A little bit of a slight lead thanks to that 3-kill Zed. But ultimately, 400 gold is not too tragic. But Zed picking up that double kill did give him a very big shot and completed his build toward a cutlass. So now Ash and Sona in the bottom lane got to be very careful because he could probably nuke through either one of them on his own.
And I think that was the sequence of events that Netherlands needed to get themselves back into this game mentally. It felt a little bit like they were a little shocked after that bottom engage where the turret went down and they dropped a couple of kills. They've now got themselves firmly back into this game. It is even. There's one tower apiece. It's only really a little bits of CS that do separate these two teams. And as we said, 3-1 on Morsu. We saw a brilliant game from him earlier today on Zed. We'll see whether he can repeat that performance, but Lissandra might be in trouble here. Riftwalk comes in. That silence is going to prevent the Ice Claw from being used. Forced to ultimate herself and can't quite get away as Bro will pick that one up.
Yep, it was a nice try, but it was well played by the Dutch team to wait for a one in the bush, one on the other side. Even if she had got that claw off any further, she was dead. Nice. All comes in from Ash though.
Takes a crystalline arrow and gets removed for it. They drop Frederick low. He does have his passive available, so able to get away from this one without even dropping that.
That Kha'Zix Aatrox combo is so good at following up Ash arrows. As soon as it lands, the pair of them just leap in and unload damage while the CC chain continues. So you're going to have to be really on their toes today if you're on this Dutch squad. Make sure you avoid all of those arrows.
And the Netherlands are actually playing fairly confident here. I don't know whether to say risky or not, because there are only 3 members of the Dutch team pushing in that middle lane, with Morsu showing himself in bottom. They might have been in trouble there, but it didn't look like Spain wanted to follow up. Frederick was still quite low from that previous engagement.
So Metalex returns back out after his brief stint in the afterlife. Heads over to doing the Wraith camp. The gold count again, slap bang in that even. Return turrets, of course, on opposite side of the map gone down. Do you see Caitlyn heading towards the top lane with Lulu as a way to try and save that from Lissandra's push, while Zed starts to punish that bottom turret.
Spain taking a little bit of initiative from Genja, perhaps, by his favourite item as many times as they possibly can, with 5 Doran's Blades on their team. And why not? They do have a fairly heavy AD trio pairing of Aatrox, Kha'Zix, and Ash. We'll see where exactly they go on their builds after that. Of course, Ash does have that BF sword, so there's a couple of options there should she choose to go down that route. Of course, Infinity Edge or Bloodthirster. I would expect the Infinity Edge.
Yeah, that would make a lot more sense, especially with Ash. Oh, for some reason I've forgotten what colours were what for a minute there. You see the Dutch team stealing away these golems. They know someone's going to rotate around towards this top lane and save this tower, and they're waiting to catch that person. They for a moment thought they were standing on a ward, so they pinked it. Now they see Lissandra come out, and they'd all just revealed themselves a little bit too soon. So instead, they're going to go in, push this wave up with ease, and start to land a little bit more auto attack damage down on the turret. But with Lissandra there now, the wave clear is incredibly powerful, and they should not do too much.
Ash actually is sitting on about 2,500 gold. Sorry, 2,300 gold it is. I forgot how to count. But yeah, that's a lot of gold to be sitting on at this point in the game. Normally you'd like to convert that into items. Sat at 3-0-1, so a good start for a champion like Ash, who once you start getting those larger items... Oh no, Medina might be caught out here. The cocoon does land, and Kialis will pick that one up on the support. But that will now give them that moment of pressure that they can apply up into this top lane, and they might even look to get a lot of damage down on this inner tower.
Yeah, Kassadin pushing the tier 1 turret in the mid lane again too, and he is all alone. There's no one to try and stop him from the Spanish side because they're dealing with this top lane pressure. 3 members of the Dutch squad all sitting up there.
Arrow does land into the ultimate from Lissandra. Metalex might be caught out. The growth from Lulu will keep him alive for a couple of seconds longer to get damage off, but it's not enough for him to survive. That's a double kill for Ash. Hood Boss might be trying to come back into this one, but there's a lot of damage left there with that Kha'Zix, Ash, and Lissandra, and that's another poor trade in favor. Sorry, good trade in favor of Spain. Poor trade for the Netherlands.
Very much, and again, there's that combo, that shutdown. As soon as you get that Ash arrow to land, Lissandra's in there for you. Then Kha'Zix is sleeping on top of you. There's some pretty tragic misclicks from Metalex in and amongst all of that too. But ultimately, I don't think he would have got out of there even if he had clicked in the right direction instead of running further towards the enemy team. Couldn't quite pick up any kills on their way out, and do just have to give up 2-0.
Dragon has respawned a little while ago, and that has already been pinked by the Spanish team. Netherlands, even though they did trade somewhat badly in that exchange, still ahead by a couple of 100 gold. Dragon would, of course, even that one up for Spain, and it looks like that might be where they're looking to turn to. All 5 members of both teams have focused themselves on the lower half of the map, so we might be in for quite an explosive team fight when they do decide to take this dragon. Morsu's trying to zone Frederick out as best as he can from this wave. And now, are Spain going to start this? I don't think they should right now. Yeah, they will back off.
There's a pink on there for Spain. The pink now on the Netherlands. The arrow comes out.
Oh, doesn't quite hit, and Frederick gets stunned in place. A very nice dark flight, though, will knock up 3, and Spain have dealt quite a lot of damage. Meanwhile, in the back line, though, Hoodboss and Mortu have dealt critical damage to a couple of members. That will pop the death mark, and a second member of Spain do fall. It's 2 for 2 now, 2 for 3 in favour of Spain. The rest of the team have had to split, and it might not be over because Kialis has a Kha'Zix on him. That's another kill. 4 kills in favour of Spain, and now they look to perhaps take this dragon. Frederick doesn't quite know what to do with himself.
Now, just by the arrow missing, it managed to force 3 members of the Dutch squad to all group up, trying to run around that corner into the tri-bush, and then Frederick managed to land a beautiful knock-up, landing right in amongst all 3 of them, opened them up to a lot of damage from the Spanish side. Yes, Zed was in the background, he did manage to kill off Ash and eventually Sona, but it took him a long time to do that, even with Kassadin's help, and both he fell down and was cut off and was well out of position once the kill had gone through. So here's what I mentioned earlier about the Netherlands team with the Dutch team. They didn't snowball quite so well out of lane. They didn't come up behind, but they didn't snowball quite so well out of lane. They came very, very even, and now the Spanish squad is just out team fighting them.
And the Spanish squad are actually looking a lot better than I think people would have given them credit for on paper. There's not really... For anybody that's outside of the Spanish scene, there aren't really any major names on this Spanish team. When you think of Spanish players, this Fast Dragon does get caught out, does ultimate Bro to keep himself alive there, stops that damage coming out, and Spain will turn away from this one. But these aren't exactly the Spanish players that you'd think of if you instantly had to... If someone said to you, hey, think of a Spanish player, these wouldn't quite be the guys. But they're putting up a great show against the Netherlands team that we saw do a good job earlier of dispatching previous opposition.
Yeah, Kassadin still alone in this mid lane, just farming and pushing. He's taking the turret down to the last, or less than a quarter of its health. Lose there with him now, but Aatrox has got very good wave clear, so they need to be very careful. And of course, he has great engage should he get support in a position that the Kassadin and Lulu combo do not spot. So they do back up and play it a little bit safer until reinforcements arrive.
That mid tower has taken quite a beating already. There's only a couple of 100 health left on that one. The Netherlands would really like to get that tower down, and they've kind of had their aggression stemmed. We were talking about how the first game that the Netherlands played went when they were just super aggressive, managed to push down towers so very quickly. They haven't been able to replicate that in this game so far, and we'll see whether they can get to a point where that is going to start to happen. Meanwhile, Morsu at 5 and 2 has finished the Blade of the Rune King and the Last Whisper, so he's going to be doing a lot of damage. But that luck of the Iron Solari, Spain will eat quite a lot of that damage if possible in these team fights. And Spain have just been able to get good positioning in the fights and catch the Netherlands out when their team fight is so much better than them.
Yeah, and you said that Locket, a little bit burst of shield, a little bit burst of effective HP. And against a team that is all assassin champs, all just dive in, blow you up, run away, that extra little shield could be the difference between life and death. And once you have got that life, once you've survived that initial burst, then the tables turn and these assassins have to run away with their tails between their legs.
Spain just playing this one out fairly consistently here. They really just stemming that aggression. You can see Frederick is hanging around in this bottom lane. They know that Zed is here, who will go aggressive. There's the trap laid by Frederick. They're trying to get the kill. Zed will pick that one up. That's massive damage. I don't think they quite expected that much damage to come out. Morsu now has to run. Nice cocoon out from Brobo. Will lock Kha'Zix in place, but forces the ultimate as well. Of course, that was the second charge, so can't quite catch on towards that. Finally, however, for the Netherlands, they do manage to take down that middle tower.
So Metalex pushing that top lane as well, so along with that middle tower, they do manage to finish off that top tier 2, so that's a very good trade as far as the Dutch team are concerned. A lot of map control, 2,000 more gold as far as the team's concerned, and that's a lot of room to play with.
Hood Boss is going to recall. Let's see. He's got 1,300 gold. What will he add to his items? Let's see. It's a blasting wand. I wonder what else he'll pick up for that. Oracle's
heading towards that Seraph's Embrace.
Yes, of course.
As the staple combination is now for Cassins.
Yeah, and Lulu has picked up an Oracle's as well. Going to try and restrict the vision as best as they can away from Spain, because that really is what they're going to have to use to their advantage to be able to take these team fights. If they can manage to see most of the Netherlands on the map at all times, it makes Netherlands' team composition far less effective that their assassins can't just come out of nowhere and pick up kills when there's only 1 or 2 members of Spain around. You saw how it was when Morsu got his hands on Ashe. They just managed to delete her from the map before they could do anything about it.
Yeah, they can see there's 2 people, or they can see the Z spot. They're going to realize Elise is around there soon enough.
Arrow lands onto Metalex. Good knockup, but it's not enough to keep Metalex alive. Fast Dragon does pick that one up. That is going to be a fairly easy middle lane tower picked up. And it looks like Netherlands might actually just look to base race this, as they are focusing on that inhibitor turret. Darkflight comes forward. They don't quite land the damage. That tower is dying very quickly, but equally as fast is that bottom lane tower, and it looks like we're going to trade inhibitors here. Spain don't have a minion wave, so they can't really keep going. Netherlands aren't really as fast though, so even though they have minions, they're not going to be able to follow that up any further.
That's what I was going to say. As soon as they see them bot, the arrow will fly. And, my client crashed, so I had to see it on the stream. But inhibitor trade very much worth it as far as the Dutch team is concerned, especially because they could do it in such a fashion of being split like that, and they lost the bottom inhibitor, so that bottom lane will still push towards that bottom inhibitor and towards that bottom half of the map, meaning Spain are going to have to send someone all the way down there to deal with it, and all the way down there means as far as possible from the Baron pit. And so as far as I'm concerned right now, a very quick rush Baron is something that could really give the Dutch the advantage here. That extra boost, that sustain you get from the regen, as well as the extra damage bonuses you get, would really help them in a 5v5 fight.
Yeah, and Spain are actually focusing on the dragon for now. No wards out from the Netherlands means they aren't quite aware of this just yet, and Metalex is actually taking red, so that is a free dragon for Spain. But they've given up their position around the Baron, which has meant that Netherlands are able to secure some wards down. Both supports do have oracles, however, so now it's the game of maneuvering around this area to try and get... Actually, the arrow will come out. Flash burn from Metalex. I think they'll feel that that's worth it, but it does severely limit the team fight from Spain. We have seen them win fights without that Ashe arrow landing, though.
Yeah, I mean, Metalex, yes, he blew his flash, but flash for arrow is a much shorter cooldown.
Oh,
and now
Medina's about to get absolutely destroyed as Zed finds the amount of damage to pick her off the map. Repel comes through, Frederick trying to get away. Morsu will use the shadow to push forward, and they will pick up Frederick. Meanwhile, Kassadin has picked up another one, and Kha'Zix is on the run too. Netherlands have just found themselves a couple of these very important picks that we've seen, and without any contention there, they pick 4 up, and they lose nothing.
I mentioned it before, if the Dutch team fall behind, this is what they needed to do. Catch a couple of people off guard, blow them up with your assassins, and then take objectives. And this is what they did. They found Sona, they blew her up, fine, that's done. That happens a lot of supports. But then the rest of the Spanish squad, Lissandra and Aatrox, going in to try and help her out, meant that the rest of them would fall down to the remaining assassins that still had all their combinations from the Dutch team, and they could just pick them off on their way in and on their way out.
Yeah, Glacial Path comes through. Really nice shadow out by Morsu. Meant that the Ring of Frost didn't lock anybody in place there. Metal X might be caught here. You can see the slow did get applied. Dark Flight into the Blades of Torment. Can't quite catch on Metal X. Of course, doesn't have that flash available, so trying to land whatever he can. This time the arrow lands. Netherlands are already positioning themselves to try and follow up on this. Here comes Hood Boss. Zonya's Hourglass has been used, however, will manage to Rift Walk back out, and Kha'Zix is now chasing Bro. However, look at the bottom lane. There's a lot of minions pushing in. Nice repel. It's not quite enough to get over the Baron wall. Mistimed the Dark Flight, but it doesn't quite matter. However, those minions are starting to push into both bases here, and Morsu picks himself up another kill as Spain were thinking about Baron.
And suddenly they can no longer think about Baron. It's very nicely done. A good retreat from the Dutch squad, taking out a couple of people as they went. Unfortunately for Metalex, that arrow came back up off cooldown, and Elise was still a little bit exposed. But Zed quickly takes revenge by hiding in one too many bushes and picking up a low health Aatrox again. This is where the Dutch team has strength. They are assassins. They find people in odd positions and they blow them up. Spain needs to stop being in odd positions and group up, as Kha'Zix loses his life in half a second.
And Kialis actually came in to maybe save Morsu, but it's forced Morsu to come back in towards this one. And kind of that's what Zed does, is he makes you think he hasn't killed you and then turns his back and that death mark pops. And along with it, Kha'Zix's life did end. Luckily for Kialis, though, he was able to get out alive by ultimating himself.
Indeed. Very nicely played, and of course that Zed coming back in helped him out, scared the Lissandra away. So top inhib is exposed now, but it's not quite dead. It's very, very low on health, but the Dutch squad is still happy to push mid lane, keep that pressure up, and make someone stay there and deal with that tower, and then rotate around and up again. Lissandra at the moment is keeping the creeps off that wave by pushing it as hard as she can. She can do it pretty quickly, but of course those creeps have 100 HP more than creeps on that team with no dead inhibitors.
Now, the inhibitors are coming up very shortly, and what that means is that Netherlands will have that top inhibitor still. Of course, they didn't get that top inhibitor, they got the tower. So they have 2 open inhibitors available. And we've seen that the Netherlands really are not afraid to split push with this kind of composition. We saw them pushing every single lane in the previous game. Will they default back towards that? Looks like maybe they want to clear the Baron, but there is a ward right there. Hoodboss is stood on top of that ward without an oracle. So Spain are fairly confident in knowing what is going on and are now coming across. They will clear that ward out.
They will, but the question is what kind of positions do they have to give up to do so. Quick push up the mid lane means Spain will be able to zone them off to one side, except they chickened out a little bit and backed away. They also have big wave of creeps in the bottom lane onto an inhibitor that's just respawned, and Elise is toying with the idea of pushing that top lane. So Spain need to make their mind up shortly, or they're just going to lose that bottom inhib to another wave of creeps.
Yeah, and the thing is, they actually are trying to chase on towards here. They need to prevent any backing, because it was kind of fortunate for the Netherlands team. They got one last wave of super minions into that bottom lane, which means there's now 2 super minions hammering down on that inhibitor, which forces Fast Dragon back. They will spot this, and that will allow them to clear out some of these wards that are around this Baron area as Elise pushes the top lane.
Yeah, those freshly placed wards put down there by Sona, that's what that move was taking part in, as far as Spain are concerned. Lou immediately takes them all away again, but with Lissandra clearing the bottom lane, Elise and Caitlyn are clear to go and push the top lane onto the next inhibitor that's there. So they're both missing a little bit of health now. As long as the Dutch team keep pressure up in all these lanes at once, it's going to hit a point where someone has to go and deal with both sides, and then they're going to be able to take the Baron 3v5.
And we've seen how well they can fight in those segmented team fights where they're just catching 1 or 2 out in the jungle or around an area like Baron. Here comes the home guard from Aatrox, maybe looking for some kind of dark flight into the team of the Netherlands, but they have to be incredibly careful where they engage. It is a 4,000 gold difference, which isn't as big as we've seen some of the differences from the Netherlands, so both teams fairly still in this. I mean, Netherlands have themselves a 10-2 Zed, which is always a little bit difficult to deal with, but one bad team fight for the Netherlands or a good arrow from Spain can easily turn this game back around.
Oh yeah, it's definitely still anybody's game. It's definitely the closest game we've had all weekend as well. Kha'Zix goes over to the blue buff, tries to steal it away. Doesn't quite get the kill onto Zed, but the fight has begun.
Yeah, Morsu might be caught here. The ultimate comes out from Lissandra. 8 in the hole comes through. Kassadin will look to follow it up, but he is in between 3 members of the Spanish team. Now Spain will back off, but Elise has been pushing that top lane. That is a good pickup for Spain. I believe they got the shutdown gold from Morsu there, so they will pick themselves up some gold and stem the aggression from the Netherlands for another minute or so.
So nicely done. Let's try from the Netherlands to rotate and do that, but they cannot pull that off just yet. And again, I like the way they tried to clean up that Kha'Zix kill despite Zed dying, using that Caitlyn ultimate from range, then Kassadin blinking in as well to try and do the last little bit of damage. It was very nicely saved by the Spanish team, but again, that was what this comp is about, finding someone out of position and then nuking him down. Even if the rest of your team are slightly spread out, slightly far away, they have those long range abilities and gap closers to get in and amongst them. But they recalled, and Spain spotted them doing so on a ward. So they've immediately gone towards the Baron, but they are not unspotted themselves, and the Dutch team are closing in.
Yeah, not only that, they're not doing it all that fast as well. Spain are taking their time over this one, and they already have minions in the top lane. Bro goes aggressive on towards that nice flash out. Crescendo will land on 4 members of the Netherlands, and their health is dropping rapidly. Morsu is in the back line, however. Look at the damage coming from that Zed. That's a double kill. I think it was a triple to end it with an extra kill there for Caitlyn. They already have that big wave in the top lane. That's an ace, and with 30 seconds on the smallest death timers, that might even be the game here.
It may very well be. The Dutch team are heading for it. They've got a big wave of creeps here, and by big I mean 4 waves entirely. Most of them are range creeps, and that's going to do a lot of damage to these turrets too. They do clear that out very quickly. Inhib number 1 is down. They've got 20 seconds left up, or 10 on Kha'Zix. GG has already come out from the Spanish team, and with that second Nexus turret being nuked down, that mass assassin combination from the Dutch team, do it again.
And Fast Dragon saying so bad call, but to be honest, we've seen teams make that kind of call in many games. You feel like you need to do something to get back into it. They got the pick and they felt they had the position on it. But that's one of those 50-50 Baron moments.